Dear Diary, making the decision to immigrate to Calgary felt like I was placing an Amazon order for freedom, endless possibilities, social security, and a beautiful world of seamlessly integrated multiculturalism. Only instead of autofilling my credit card information, clicking buy now, and receiving my package the next day, I spent months filling out paperwork and acquiring various documentations. And I spent years waiting for my visa. And when my metaphorical package finally did arrive, it wasn't exactly what I ordered.
We're Onyie and Tomi, and on Diary of a Niger Immigrant, we're talking about what happens after you buy that one-way ticket. We'll chat with guests and hear their immigration stories. We'll commiserate, celebrate wins, and gossip about recent microaggressions. Buckle up, y'all. This is part 2 of mine and Onyie's conversation. If you missed part 1, be sure to check that out first and then join us back here. All right, let's get started.
Black people are included in everything that they do. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like that was good for my sense of identity and my confidence and all of that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. We talk about, or at least I often think about identity and sense of self as such a solo portfolio, I suppose, just something that is really cultivated within. And while I think that's true, I just can't think of a situation in which my identity hasn't been either heavily informed by or completely defined by my external surroundings. And while, yes, I know that ultimately self-love, self-acceptance, all of those things are really the foundation for, a strong sense of self and identity. And that does come from within. It's just in no way an isolated experience. It's such a, I don't know, while I think it can be, it is very internal, I just feel like our surroundings play such a key part of how we understand ourselves and how we ground ourselves. And it's interesting to hear you talk about going this shift from, coming from Nigeria here and, being just a person, a regular person, to coming and being a person with an accent, or being, a Black person, or being the only Black person in a room, or whatever. And it's so funny because I have the opposite experience in so many ways, where a lot of my identity, I realized, was coming from being the only Black person in a room, was coming from this knowledge of I was always going to be different. I was always going to stand out, to the point where when I started being in spaces with more Black people, I was like, I don't know what to do with myself, because my calling card, or this thing that used to always be the go-to, or mine, at least I was always going to be the only Black person in the room. At least there was always something that was going to be special about me in that way. Then going into more and more spaces where I was surrounded by more Black people, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting that I didn't think that was part of how I viewed myself. I didn't think that was in the mix, but then I realized it totally was. And so even when we talk about university experiences and stuff like that, my entire program in my undergrad, I was the only Black person. Actually, that's not true. I wasn't, but in terms of my entire cohort from beginning to end, I pretty much was. And then going into my master's program, which was I did that a few years later, but there were 6 Black people in my program. And I know that sounds small, but that blew me away.
It was a lot.
It's a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And it was a cohort of maybe 40 something. So I was honestly, that was a lot. I was absolutely shocked by that. And I was this is weird. This is weird being in a context like this and not being the only Black person. And so I'm just it's so interesting, once again, how, for better or worse, those positions that we're in and how society views us and how that informs us, even if we've taken it and channeled it for good, even if we see it in a positive way, I'm just I don't see how that can not affect how we understand ourselves. You know what I mean?
I understand. So now I'm curious about like with everything, because you weren't born here, but right? You were born here, right?
Not in Calgary, but yeah, in Canada.
Yeah, in Canada. But there's something that people always say, that kids don't see color. So how were you
that's not
able
true.
to identify? Oh, that's not true.
It's not true.
Okay.
They do. I mean, if they say kids, like infants don't.
Yeah.
But I'm also pretty sure they're like colorblind too. But like legitimately. But no, kids do.
Yeah?
They absolutely do. I probably heard my first like racist comment when I was like 3, 4. So
Did you know what it was when you heard it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, it was very like kids definitely see. And like, yes, it's not an inherent thing. Obviously, it's not like a biological, like, real, like, what am I trying to say? Like a, anthropological, like evolutionary, like difference. It's not actually something that's innate. It's definitely learned. So I think maybe that's what people mean when they say like kids don't see colors. Like it's something you have to learn, which is absolutely true. But kids learn quick. And so I'm like, yeah, it's definitely by the time they're socializing, most concepts, most social constructions they've learned at that point. And I think like they build, it takes a while. It takes a while for kids to, for example, care about the social construct of like gender or like it takes those kind of layer on. It takes a while for them to pick up certain things. But I think race is a big one, and they pick it up like pretty early, I think. Yeah.
So apart from being the only Black kid around you and seeing that, all of a sudden there are so many, what else has informed your sense of identity, and how has that actually affected you and made you or shaped you to who you are right now?
Yeah, I think so. Like surroundings is definitely a big one. So this idea of like you already said, like, being the only Black kid in a room, like that was a really big one. My family, that was a huge one, and that really like messed me up later because I feel like I was always referred to in a collective, especially with my sisters.
What does that mean?
So the three of us were kind of really seen as like a unit. And so people always just called us like the Jelly Girls. Like that was how we were kind of defined as. So it was very rare it was a pretty like rare occurrence for me to feel like somebody was engaging with me specifically, or someone knew me personally, or somebody wanted or was referring to me in a specific way. That was like very, very rare. My name has always been a big one. I always joke that I answer to Joy, Grace, Tommy, Tony. I answer to so many different names, including Joy and Grace are my sister's names. So I answer to my sister's names because people could never tell us apart. So the idea like that, people have always just like, said my name really weird. So I'll answer to like any variation of that. I have felt very like this idea or this concept of like being known and being known personally. So someone calling me by my name, or someone knowing or identifying traits about me, like not traits about the Jelly Girls, but traits about me, that has always been like such a powerful and like intimate experience for me, because I just never felt like known or seen. And so I was like, what? I've never felt like known or seen. So I feel like that was a big piece of it, is growing up around my family, feeling like I was part of like a unit and not really seen as an individual. That was a big part of it. And then go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, and then I would say the biggest thing, honestly, that has informed so much of my identity is like my insecurities. I've been so driven and directed by my insecurities, and so everything, most of what I get praised for, or most of my successes, or anything that somebody might call like to be like, oh yeah, this is a good trait that Tomi has, it probably was birthed out of an insecurity, and it's probably because I fear that I don't have that thing, or I fear that I'm not enough in that category.
Example.
And so I overcompensate like so heavily.
Example.
So okay, what's an example? Okay. One example is that I grew up always having body image issues, and like from such a young age, that was just such a part of my life. And always feeling like I wasn't, good enough in some category. And so that ended up into, obviously that, resulted in having like weird body dysmorphia issues and stuff like that. Also, but ended up also in me like getting into like competitive fitness, and that became like a huge part of my life. This idea that no one would ever be able to say I was like unfit, or nobody could ever call me this, because I would have the receipts to prove it. I could show you like the competitions I've won. I could show you this. I always had to be able to like have the receipts to prove. Growing up in my family, I always felt like the dumb one, and I was always just like, yes, I'm like, felt so dumb always. That was like a huge chip on my shoulder. And like also growing up, like there were so many comments made too, just about me and the way I carried myself, and people just thought I was dumb. And so that was it became this deep insecurity where I got to the point where like no one thought I was dumb anymore. Like everyone was over it, but it just became like my life's mission, where I was like, I have to prove this to people. It has to be like something that, I just like have to prove to people. So I feel like even just like going hard in my like academic journey, that had to be something where I could have a receipt to prove like I'm not dumb, I'm smart, like here it is. It always had to be something. And then I feel like those are probably the biggest insecurities, I think. And then in general, there's this very like holistic insecurity that I feel like every insecurity kind of comes down to, of like you were already saying, just like not being enough. And so the idea of somehow being like undeniable has been so important to me always growing up. Like I have to it just goes back to receipts. I need receipts. I need data to prove, so that nobody can say I'm not X. Nobody can say I'm not good enough. Nobody can say whatever. And so every time like, an award or an acknowledgement or an accolade or anything like that comes through, it's like, okay, that's so exciting. And then it's just like, okay, but someone could discredit that because X, or someone could say I only got that because of this, so I need to get the next
So
one.
you kept self-sabotaging.
And it just, it became the thing where I was like, oh, I had to have that realization where I was like, these will never be good enough. Like there is literally no award or no acknowledgement that I could get that would make me feel good enough. Like I swear to God, I could win a Nobel Prize today and I would still feel like a dumbass. Like I'm just like, it's just so deeply ingrained to the point where like, I mean, I'm obviously like not that hung up on it anymore, but in terms of what I've built my life around and that foundation of like how I've seen myself and how I've positioned myself, it's all been so informed with this idea of like, I want to be seen, I want to be known, I want to feel good enough, And so I don't know I think those pieces, those insecurities are the only thing other than my location and my proximity to whiteness. Those are the things that have probably informed my sense of self the most.
That's interesting. So would you say if you were not born in Canada and you were born in Nigeria, do you think that still would have been something that you would have struggled with?
The intelligence thing, yes. The being known and being seen, no. And then obviously the other piece, which I talked a lot about in my episode, but that piece of like finding a sense of belonging and really just wanting to understand where I fit and all of that stuff, I don't think that would be at play either. I think I was always destined to feel dumb. And I think that's a very, I feel like the pursuit of some sort of academic stamp of approval is just a very Nigerian experience that I would have felt anywhere I was, so.
I was going to say that because one thing is Nigerian parents always we always take education above every other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, but it just feels like regardless of how you were, even as a child,
Mm-hmm.
even if you were one of those who struggled with being enough intellectually,
Mm-hmm.
when you become a parent, you want to push your child to be way more than whom you are. And maybe but one thing we haven't really realized and understood is nobody cares about, like, when you become yourself and you're grown and you're whoever you are, nobody would care about how much A's you got in junior high or in elementary. Nobody's gonna care about that.
Right.
But then we just grow up and then we forget, and then we start to push our kids to become way more, and then we project that sense of self, and which leads to self-sabotaging or feeling like I'm not enough, or just putting ourselves down more than we should, because like everybody cannot be the same thing, right? When my child, like, he's still in kindergarten, but when he first started, I remember my son is very good in math, and he started to read at 4. So like at 4 he could count 1 to 100 and he could do simple addition. That's just like who he is as a person. And like he went to Montessori's and all of that, and it's not like we pushed him. I know we gave him everything he needed to get to, but we didn't push him like that. And this is something that he has. He's gifted with. But he goes to kindergarten and they're asking him to do 1 to 10. And if he isn't interested in doing 1 to 10 because he just feels like, I'm bored, this isn't enough. And then they're asking him to paint and draw, and he's unable to draw. And then the teacher tells him that drawing is a life skill. And I'm like, if a child doesn't know how to draw, how is it? There are so many other things he's good in. Why not harness those things he's good in? Why are we always hell-bent on those things a child isn't good in doing? So like, I could be in school and maybe I'm not, like, I can remember elementary, I wouldn't say I was one of the I wouldn't classify myself as one of the most intelligent. And so many things could have led to that. It could be because my childhood was just a lot. And not having my dad close by and everything my family had to do. Like, I was born with a silver spoon and then I lost the spoon, something like that. So like, I had a very, 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 like, my childhood wasn't the most rosy one. And sometimes it also had a play in my sense of identity, because I'm just like, okay, I was one of those kids who would go to school with a new backpack or a new like those kind of things that kids always used to use in classifying each other. And then all of a sudden my shoe is already opening and my mom is unable to change it because we don't have, right? So like those things. And then I see some people who are friends with some people and I'm just like, okay, this person used to be my friend, but this person isn't my friend anymore because I don't look a certain way. So those things also had that. So even grow, like, as a full-grown woman, when there are sometimes like I would be in a relationship and I'll get jilted and I'm just like, okay, maybe this person left me because the other girl is from a well-to-do family and my family isn't so well-to-do.
Those feel, it doesn't go away. Even though you know, even though you know
exactly.
Yes.
So like growing up, I wasn't the high flyers in class. But right now, I pride myself to say that I can go into anywhere and I can represent. And like, even though like in this society that's different because then you start to doubt yourself here. But I'm so, like I pride my. People will look at me as one of the most intelligent people, and I would look at you in that same light. So like, I feel like looking at yourself in the way, maybe because you didn't pass a math test when you were 5, or maybe it doesn't really affect who you become in, like, at the end of the day. But it affects your mental, like it affects you mentally, because then you start to have those self-doubt.
And you tell yourself a story about yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly.
those stories are so powerful.
So
even if
powerful.
you have so much evidence to contradict that story, it's just so easy to sit in this thing of like, yeah, this literally, like you said, being like, I failed a math test when I was 5, and that is so irrelevant to today.
Exactly.
But somehow
It's still
can be
there.
foundational to who you are, which is really, really crazy.
Yeah.
At the end of every episode, we ask our guests, what's something that you, now looking back on your journey, what's something that you would have done differently, or what's something that you wish you would have known before buying that one-way ticket. And I'm curious to know, after everything that we've talked about, how identity is so informed, or can be so informed, by our outside world. Yet, this podcast, this show is all about changing our world. It's all about, buying that one-way ticket, picking up and moving. So what's something that, maybe advice that you would have from somebody who is on their immigration journey or starting their immigration journey? What advice would you give to someone to either hold on to their sense of self, or to, be open to growing or evolving their sense of self? So that's one piece of it. Or you could speak to what's something that you think would have helped you specifically during your immigration journey to... It's hard. I don't even want to say to hold on to your sense of self, because I don't know if that's necessarily the goal. Our sense of self will change and will evolve, and I think that's totally fine. But I guess, to preserve a strong sense of identity, or to, have a strong sense of identity. What's something that you either, wish you had known, or advice that you would give for someone specifically who is immigrating?
It's actually hard to give someone an advice in that sense, because like we rightly discussed before, everything shapes it. Even your childhood and like the foundation of everything. So if it's a person who has always had that sense of doubt from one thing or the other, it would somehow come into play, right?
Yeah.
But I would just say that it's your journey. And you have to go through it. No other person can leave it for you. But just always remember that you would always, like, nothing can change who you are. And those things have shaped you into becoming the person you are. So enjoy your today. And try and forget about, it might be hard, but try and forget about those foundational things that might have put a dent in the way you see yourself, and try and look at who you are right now, your accomplishments, how far you've come, what you're able to do, your abilities. Even though sometimes our abilities are put into doubt because of the setting and things around us and things that surround us, but just try and hold on to and look at that thing that you're achieving, and just see yourself as, okay, I have this, and that's something in the bag. And also, like, so many other people could be wishing to be where you are, and they're not. So just enjoy it and be who you are. I would also have an advice for some, like, an African parents who maybe might immigrate because we just have that thing about pushing our kids. And I wouldn't say that I'm not totally guilty about it, because of course you want your kids to be better than you. But we should try not to project our insecurities on our kids, and try to let the kids just be who they are.
Yeah.
If they're good in something, just harness it. You could help them compensate for the others that they might not be like so good in.
Yeah.
You might help to push them, but don't bring them down. Help them see more of who they are and that good side of them, and help them celebrate that more. Because at the end of the day, this whole thing is just generational. We just keep passing it on, and kids grow up, and so many people are just broken in this society, and it just tends to just mess with our heads and everything. And I feel like the change starts with us. It starts with our generation. We need to stop. We need to start pushing our kids to be better by enjoying and harnessing their God-given talents, like their potential, that thing you see in them. There's no child who doesn't have something that you can hold on to and say, okay, this child might not be good in this, but this child is very good in this. Harness that, look at that, and celebrate that more than you actually talk about or put down that thing that they are not so good in. Because every single child, like you might have 5 children and all 5 children can never be the same. They'll each have their potential or where they're good in, and where this child might be good in might not be where this child is good in. So just try and identify that thing and try and just celebrate that more. And don't just push the child into having that self-doubt and self-sabotaging. So
that's so true. And I feel like the other piece, it's so important to remember for anybody who, if you're changing, if you're dramatically changing your life in any way, if you're making a move, if you're, changing a friend group, whatever that looks like, is that this idea, this sense of self can always be rebuilt. And it's okay if it gets destroyed because you are moving away from a close group of friends, or it's okay if it gets destroyed because you're moving to a new home or you're doing something completely different. It's something that can always be rebuilt, because the things that define us, the things that we're sort of drawn to, they're all things that we're constantly learning, and those are always going to evolve. And for anybody who doesn't have like childhood memories, everyone obviously like has very different, like varying degrees of childhood memories, but I think it's always really cool to think about anything that you were drawn to or liked to do as a child, because to your point, those things are probably very innate, and it probably has nothing to do with a friend group or perception or like a metric of success or something you were trying to gain. It was probably just something that like brought you joy. And chances are there are a couple things that, like, if we all got I was talking to somebody last night and they were saying, like, if we all got amnesia today, we all lost our memory, everything that's left is the only thing that's real. So, things like, your desire to eat, your desire, like a parent-child relationship, like nurturing someone. So, like, all of those things are real. Most things we just made up, things like language, things like are all things that we just like made up. And so I feel like when it comes to identity and sense of self and how we understand ourselves in a position and our position in this world, that's all made up too, which means it can all be changed and it can all be evolved. But if you have any early memories, that's a really, really great place to kind of start and to go to be like, what is just me? What are some things that I like to do as a kid? What are some things that have always brought me joy regardless of where I am? Because those are probably some of the pieces that are just you and have nothing to do with the world around you. But I think that we can't get away from having our identity kind of built up on and informed by the world around us. And so just being open to like letting it change and letting it grow, and kind of showing ourselves love and compassion throughout those transitions is really the key. Because there will always be evolution as long as we continue to like change where we are and who we're surrounded by.
That's a very good point. I also have one last question to ask you. So growing up and going through everything, you have your undergrad, you have your master's. What would be a bias about you that you would actually want to change and put out there and explain to people? Like, not like you owe anybody any explanation, but like, just take it as you're telling yourself, this is a bias that shaped who you are and shaped your mindset and everything. And what is the truth, and how would you like to correct that bias?
That's interesting. When you say that, do you mean a bias in terms of a misconception that I feel that people actually have about me, or a story that I told myself that's not true?
Maybe a little of both, because both are very interesting. What are the things people said of you that is untrue? A misconception about you that you feel is not true. And then also talking to yourself, what have you thought and internalized and told yourself, this is who I am?
Yeah.
And now, knowing what you know, who do you think you are in this context, and how would you want to change that in your mind?
Yeah, that's a good question. I okay, so firstly, the perception or the thought that, people have about me. I once had somebody saying something about me, and they were talking about how, like, oh, all Tomi cares about is success or something, which was honestly like the craziest thing I've ever heard. I was like, clearly you don't know me at all. But I think that my like image and what I put out there, could potentially convey that to some people, that like that's what I care about, and that's my goal. I just like I don't think people understand like truly how like childlike and I am, in the sense of like I actually don't care about like success or whatever. Like I'm just searching for something. You know what I mean? And like anytime I am, going for that next achievement or whatever. I'm like, sure, I'm a goal-oriented person, like I always will be, but anytime I am like going for the next big achievement, or something happens, or I'm celebrating something, or I'm taking on that next project, or whatever. Yes, I'm probably like, doing something I'm drawn to and enjoying, hopefully. But if I'm not doing that, I'm probably just fighting a voice that's telling me like, if you don't take this opportunity, you will never be given another opportunity again. And if you don't do this big thing, or if you don't have, another byline in like a big magazine, or if you don't do this, or if you don't do that, then people will forget about you, and like you will not be good enough. Like, so this idea that I am like, constantly climbing, and like all I care about is that, and like, is so untrue, because like really, no, I'm just like here like everybody else, like fighting my own demons and trying to prove to myself that like I'm good enough and I'm worthy. And so I think that's a really common misconception, as if like that's actually the goal. Like my eye is actually on this prize of like success, and that's something I value, and that's something that I value in other people. It's not. When I look, the people that I respect the most are people that know themselves, and people that that it shows that they love themselves, people that practice boundaries, people that have self-confidence. That's who I admire. It's not people with like the most accolades or whatever. So I think people often think that like that's my goal. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm literally just trying to prove to myself that I'm worthy, and I know I can't with external things. But that's what you see, like, that image, that's what's happening behind the scenes. So I think that's a big common misconception in terms of how I'm often perceived. I think that just kind of dovetails right into the story that I've told myself, of this idea that like I have something to prove. And, there's something, I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to like love. When we talk about being enough, like enough for what? Or when I talk about being worthy, like worthy of what? It really all comes down to like love. And I think that's the story that I tell myself is like, love is something to be earned. And somehow, in some way, I haven't earned it yet. And so there's a piece there, that there's always a piece there of like, okay, you need to like work harder. You need to earn more. You need to get there. And then you'll feel whole, and then you'll feel enough, and then you'll feel worthy. So I think that's the misconception. That's the story that I've been telling myself. And I know that alternate story is, like sitting in the quiet and like holding myself in the silence and in the quiet, and like showing myself that love. And I think while I like to think that I'm getting there every day, like I'm really getting there, I see it pop up like, every day in every little thing. Anytime I say no to something, or I say yes to something that I should have said no to, I'm like, okay, there it is. I'm still trying to earn something. I'm still trying to prove it. I have this thought and this fantasy that like the second I turn 30, it's all gonna change. So I'm like, I can't wait. I hear 30 is amazing.
It's amazing.
I hear
it
just only
so
good things. I cannot wait till 30. Everybody is like, 30 is awesome. And I'm like, I can't wait. So I'm like, yeah, next summer, look out. Like, you won't even recognize me. I'm like, I will just be so sound. I will be so like, I will be so like self-assured. It'll be amazing. My boundaries will be like everywhere. Like, you won't even be able to get to me. So yeah. What about you though? I know you feel like that was the last question, but I do want to hear you answer. What is a myth or a misconception you feel like people have of you? And what is a false story that you've told yourself?
I don't even know how to answer that question.
Well, you're the one who asked it.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just like, I don't know. So I don't know. Like, I feel like when people see me, I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like I would like to hear the misconception people have
of you.
But I'm always that girl that, like, everywhere I find myself, I'm always that girl that people look at and they're like, oh gosh, they're like, I feel like it has actually changed.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe from uni,
mm-hmm.
I would say people would look at me and think I have everything all together,
Mm-hmm.
or like I'm someone who doesn't lose sleep
Mm-hmm.
or something like that, or that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, even here, because it's different here, I feel like when people first see me, they just don't expect. One person asked me just this week, someone asked me, so where are you? I know you live in Canada, but where are you originally from? I'm like, I'm from Nigeria. And she goes, oh, but you speak English.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, of course, I speak English. So,
mm-hmm.
like, that, when people see me here, they see a Black woman. They don't see a woman who is capable.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I finally prove that I'm capable, it then feels like, okay, they don't feel like I'm capable enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But from my undergrad days, people would see me and say, oh, she looks good, and she looks like someone who is, especially like, I remember when in my first year of uni, and because I'm someone who likes to dress nice and all of that, so people just thought I was dumb until the first exams, and I had all A's, and people were like, what? So then, like, I have to prove myself because of the way I look, right? People don't really see me as, like, even when I graduated from university and I was like, I was number 3, and someone was like, you number 3, how? And then I showed the person, like, that, because it was arranged according to, and the person was like, that doesn't mean I want to see the number 3. And I was like, why do you think? Right? So, like, people just look at you and they're like, okay, she's not so intelligent because because in Nigeria, I would be, oh God, I don't know how to say this without sounding very prideful.
Yeah,
but anyways, like, yeah, people just used to see me like a pretty face, but nothing more, right? But here, I don't even get the sense of having a pretty face. I just feel like I feel like she's not even a pretty face. She's not enough mentally. It's just.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Just weird. Yeah. It's weird. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I don't know how to answer that question, but
that makes a lot of sense. I think
I'm still yet to understand what people, because I always have this doubt in my head that these people doubt me, and then I try to prove, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna show you that I can do this, and then I do it, right? But there's no accolade and there's nothing coming from me. I'm like, okay,
and then you get caught up in that constant mode of like always trying to prove something, and then you do it, and you're like, for what? Like, you know, they weren't gonna, show me the respect or whatever anyway.
And then sometimes it also leads to lack of motivation. I'm just like, I don't even want to do anything. What's the point, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm just like, I'm tired. Like today, I was just telling my husband, I was like, do you know what I feel like having? I feel like going on maternity leave without a baby. I don't a baby.
Right.
But I just want 1 year of not doing it, because I feel like I've
Yes.
worked so much and I'm tired of working. I'm tired of trying to prove myself. I'm tired of trying to pay bills, but at the same time trying to be myself
Yeah.
and prove that I'm enough.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
So
exhausting.
it's exhausting.
I have this thought that comes, and this is how I know I'm on the edge of burnout and I need to like take some time off. And I don't have that often, maybe like, I don't know, whatever. But this is when I know it's getting really bad. I'm usually driving to like meet up with a friend or go to an appointment or something. And I just look at all the cars around me and I'm like, I would love to get into a car accident that's not so bad that it like, you know, really hurts me, but bad enough that it puts me in the hospital for 2 weeks and no one can contact me and all my appointments. Like, I just want to be on my back for like 2 weeks to a month. And that's when I know I'm like, okay, there's a problem. Like when I start like willing a car accident, I need to take some time. But I'm like, I totally get that maternity leave thing. Like that sounds awesome.
Yes.
I would love
Without a baby, though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, we do not have time for the actual baby. We just need a time off. Okay, before we wrap, what is a story that you feel like you might be selling, even though obviously we're growing, we're learning? What's a story that like maybe it's just like still there, you get little pieces of it that comes up that you're like, yeah, that's that thing from childhood, or that's that thing from wherever, a false story that you are still kind of telling yourself?
Okay, I think I can answer that question. So sometimes I tell myself that I'm not deserving of whatever I have. I'm not deserving of love. I'm not deserving of real friendship. And I'm not deserving of just being successful, right? Especially like, okay, I think this whole thing just emanates from being an only child. So I'm an only child. I do not have siblings. I've always been alone and all that. So it just feels like, I don't know if this could be kind of generational or something that just came from, because growing up, I remember, oh my God, I don't know how to shape this without making my mom look bad, but my mom is a wonderful person. Like I love my mom to death, and I always wish every day that I could get, even if it's 1 second again with her. But growing up, like, because I was an only child, my mom was the first of 10 children, and all her siblings, like, they pop very easily, right? But she was the only one who had just one child. And then there was something like, maybe I do something and then she's scolding me. I'm like, Mommy, please, you know, I'm an only child, have mercy. My mom's like, what? You're that child that refused to bring another child. So then it just feels like I am not deserving of having people around me. And then, like I said before, growing up, being born with a silver spoon and then losing the spoon and then not having as many friends like that. And my mom always used to just seclude me from everybody else, because she's like, no, this child is spoiled. I don't want her to influence you or something like that. So like I was always in the house alone, no friends, just toys. I'm just like, I just want to mix. Like, I love to see the way people, in fact, there was one, I remember telling my mom to take me off the school bus because I wanted to walk with other kids. Like I wanted to walk home. But going on the school bus might be seen as luxury, but I just wanted to take the shortcuts with other kids and be able to laugh with other kids. I just wanted to have friends right around me. So I just always told myself that I'm probably not good enough to have friends. And that's the reason why every time, like, I don't know, it might be true and it might not be true, but when I'm in a relationship and then it goes south, I'm just like, oh God, this might sound bad, but I just always try to find out who the person is that this person ended up with, because then it feels like, oh, you left me because maybe my family isn't rich, or like I'm not well to do, or I'm not enough, or something like that, because I'm a fine girl.
And that,
right? Like, why would you leave all of this?
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
At least you know how to make sense of.
Yeah.
Maybe, even if it's so not true.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's true or not. And that's the reason why. Because
it's not true.
I am just that friend, that I am that person, that friend who would go the extra mile for anybody who calls themselves or who I call my friend.
Yeah.
I would do anything. Like, I'm just that person. I'm a ride or die kind of girl. I'm a girl's girl. But I always find out that every time I do that for my friends, when it's my turn, I don't get anything in return. So like my birthday just passed, and when this airs, it'll be a long time
like
ago.
months. But happy birthday! But we'll cut that.
Yeah. Yeah. So my last birthday, I would rephrase.
Yeah.
So during my last birthday, some group of friends like that I just met here, like I've not known them so long. They came to my house and they surprised me, and that meant so much to me. Like, it went a long way. Like, it did something to me.
Yeah.
And that's because it's something I'm not used to.
It's new.
It's new. I'm just like, what? Like, and I started telling myself, I don't deserve you guys, because it's not something I'm used to. I'm not used to being shown love.
Yeah.
So sometimes I keep telling myself, I'm not deserving of love. And the only love that I hold so close to my heart, that means the world to me, I just feel like I don't know how I deserve this, is the love from my kids. Sometimes when my kids just come and my kids just have a way of, they're very expressive of how they feel about me. They're like, Mommy, I love you so much. My son and I always have this thing where we're like, no, I love you more than you love me. And then he's like, no, you can't love me more. So like, we have that thing, and it means something to me. And it might just seem like nothing to any other person, but to me, it's so much, because I just don't feel. And okay, like during my episode, I talked about the only person who really loved me, my mom. She's the only person, and then life takes her away from me. So I'm just like, what is in this life? I am not deserving of love, because the only person who loved me, life took away from me. And that's why every time I have that fear of losing people, because people always leave. I lose my friends, I lose relationships, I lose my mom. So like, I just have that fear of, and I just try to guard it. But oh my God, I'm like choking up.
I mean, I'm not a professional therapist, but to me, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense, everything that you're describing, and this feeling like you're not deserving of love, having a really great, strong example of somebody who loves you and having them taken from you, it just confirms that story of like, yeah, clearly, like, I don't deserve this. It makes tons of sense that you would completely unknowingly maybe be drawn to people who weren't going to show you the same type of love that you showed them, because we gravitate towards people that will confirm the stories that we tell ourselves. And so it makes sense that you would have found yourselves with friends and friend groups who you would pour so much into, and they wouldn't give that to you back. And again, it's not like you're going out of your way to find people who aren't going to love you the way you need to be loved, but we do that. We gravitate towards people who will kind of like confirm our story. And it's a way that we can continuously make sense of ourselves and continuously make sense of the world, even if it's harmful to us. It's like, it makes sense. You're like, yeah, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve love. I don't deserve like a community like this. So it's something that makes sense. So when I hear you describe like having this relationship with your kids and then being in a position where at your last birthday you were shown love in a way that felt really meaningful to you, in a way that it felt like the people in your life were showing up for you, I'm like, that's so awesome, because it shows that like maybe that story is starting to shift a little bit for you, and you're allowing yourself. Yeah, I'm like, it sounds like you're allowing yourself to be surrounded by people who can show you that love.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and then, the more you'll see it, the more you'll realize like, yeah, of course I deserve this. Of course I deserve to be loved. But it's really hard, and it's really hard to like actually get there.
It is, especially because even at the back of my mind, I still have that fear that they might get taken away from me, or they might not last. Like everything might not last. I just have that fear at the back of my mind.
Yeah.
So like, I have that fear of losing people, losing things, or not. Like, I just have that fear because I have always thought myself not deserving of love. So, but hopefully I don't know if this is a therapy thing, but
no, I'm literally like, okay, well, we could do another hour on this. No, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I feel like that's something that like so many of us feel, and so many people feel, and I think people feel like really like weaker or shameful or something like that for feeling like that. But I just think it's just a reality for so many people, and it makes tons of sense. And it only takes that like that self-work and that self-love to be able to then put yourself in situations where you can receive love and be like, yeah, of course, like, yes, I deserve this. It's not gonna go away, and like, you know, being confident of that. But that's like really, really hard to do. Okay, wow, I'm like, let's take a breath. That was a lot. But yeah, that was really good. Nice. I really liked this conversation, and I feel like we dove into so many areas. And as always, I feel like this could have gone on for like 2 more hours, and we'll have to pick this up again. And because I'm like, I have so many more questions. Obviously, I have a million more questions.
Me too.
So I'm like, we'll go on. But that's why you need to join us again for our next episode, because we'll have more conversations like these with just the two of us, and also with guests, and just like explore other deep and meaningful themes. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. And I hope we've trusted you guys with our stories enough, and it doesn't backfire.
Hold our stories with care. Be
Hold it with care.
Gosh, we were vulnerable.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for listening, and I always say see you next time, but we won't see you next time. We'll catch you next time.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next time. So bye. Diary of a Niger Immigrant is presented by Afros in the City in collaboration with Through Onyie's Lens.
You can keep up with us on Instagram by following Afros in the City, following Through Onyie's Lens, and of course, following Diary of a Niger Immigrant. Once you've done all that, just keep listening. Rate us, review us, love us, root for us. Until next time.